my mentor from USC. And a monetary scholar. In 2014, I asked him if he would collaborate on a paper on Bitcoin, and he was a bit of a naysayer at first, but agreed to read the paper. He read the paper, tore it up, and from an economics point of view, really wanted to understand this. And he said, I think you got something here. This is a rules-based monetary system. I've been waiting for this for my entire career. So the combination of disruptive innovation generally, economics on top of that, and the huge misunderstanding out there as to what this is, that was intriguing and launched our research effort.
Thank you. Elon, what's influenced your views on Bitcoin?
Well, I've thought about money for quite a while, obviously since the PayPal days. And then the companies that preceded that, X.com, which I created, and Confinity, which Peter Thiel, Max Levchin, Luke Howry, and others created. When we combined the companies and made PayPal. So I've been thinking about money for a long time. And really, it's best to think of money as an information system, primarily an information system for labor allocation. For practical purposes, it exists in a series of heterogeneous databases, like very different databases in bank mainframes around the world. It moves quite slowly in reality. It seems to move fast sometimes, and it does with PayPal, which is real time. But the vast majority of the systems out there are batch processing. So the actual reconciliation may take 1 to 5 business days, sometimes longer. And you have the ACH system, which is ancient and still in operation, which is allows transfers effectively like a check would be an ACH transfer, but it's not secure. And you've got the credit card systems, which are also not secure. It would be like handing your username and password to a stranger in a restaurant if you buy a meal. So there's definitely an opportunity for something that is better from an information theory standpoint. So and there you can think of it like data on a network. I think is the way to view it. What has the most throughput? What has the least error? What drops the fewest packets? Fraud, for example, being a source of error. And government interference in currencies being a source of error. But it's fundamentally an information system. So I think it makes sense to support something that improves the quality of information with which we conduct the economy. And Bitcoin is a candidate for that. It does, I think, some things well, and it's obviously it's evolving, and there are additional things like Lightning being done on top of Bitcoin. But Bitcoin per se is mostly solving for scarcity, or rather solving for essentially having no throat to choke, decentralized. So there's no one who can be coerced in any way to empty their Bitcoin account. Well, I guess they could technically, but on an individual basis, but the system as a whole cannot. And it has an open ledger, which is also quite good. But transaction volume is low. Transaction cost is high, and usability for the average person is not yet very good. But it has a lot of potential. And I should say that, like, I'm not, and I apologize for taking a long time, but there certainly is a lot to say. In general, I'm a supporter of Bitcoin and the idea of cryptocurrency in general. But as I've said publicly, we do need to watch out for crypto taking, especially Bitcoin, using proof of work to maybe use energy that's maybe a bit too much and not necessarily good for the environment. So, but on balance, I support Bitcoin, and I'm not an investor. The only publicly traded stock I own is Tesla, and the only significant thing I own outside of Tesla is my SpaceX stock that helped create both companies. So, but apart from that, I do own Bitcoin, and Tesla owns Bitcoin, SpaceX owns Bitcoin, and then I do personally own a bit of Ethereum and Dogecoin, of course. So.
Okay, great, thank you. And we'll get into some of those issues in more depth as well. Jack, how about you? What shaped your views of Bitcoin?
The network and the community. It's deeply principled. It's weird as hell. It's always evolving, and it just reminded me of the internet when I was a kid. And I encountered alt cypherpunks when I was fairly young, and this was a topic of discussion for years. I didn't touch it until 2008 when we started Square. Elon and teams at X and PayPal inspired a lot of what we were trying to do, trying to bring in more to a physical world. But we encountered this crazy predatory system that was slow, that was obtuse. And I think, one of the things that we tried to do, which X and PayPal also tried to do, is build an abstraction layer around this complication and around this predatory nature that the financial industry can tend to be, and make it work for people. But when I saw Bitcoin in 2009, you see a chance to replace the whole foundation. And everything that Elon was talking about in terms of ACH and the credit card networks were built with very different agendas in a very different time frame. And it's crazy that they still exist, and they have scaled, but they just are not relevant to today, and they're certainly not relevant to the future, especially when you consider the entire world and countries like Nigeria or Ghana or India, and its interconnection with countries like the United States and Canada and all over Europe. So what really drove my thinking and drives my passion around it is, like, if the internet gets a chance to get a native currency, what will that be? And to me, it's Bitcoin, because of those principles, because of that creation story, because of its resilience, because of the number of tests it's been. But what inspires me the most is just the community driving it. It just reminds me of the early internet. It's the only reason that I have a career, because I learned so much from people like who are building Bitcoin today, and I continue to learn in that sense, and I'm so grateful for it.
So that's a good segue into the next question I'd like to ask you, Jack. Is you said before that Bitcoin changes everything. Can you speak more to that?
Well, I just think that a lot of what we experience in life, when you really get down to the foundation, a lot of our monetary policies, a lot of our monetary systems cause so much distraction and so much cost. And when you get to a system where you have the potential for people to truly own it, they can verify it themselves. You don't have to have trust going in. You don't have to trust it at all. You can verify it through source code or whatever your appetite is, and that any particular person can help drive the future of it. And at the same time, it's not controlled by any state. It's not controlled by any bank. It's not controlled by any corporation. And these three parties of people who participate in the network, people who mine, and also the developers, constantly debating the correct roadmap and the way forward, is a beautiful thing. And I don't know of many other consensus-based models that have existed at that scale for this long with this amount of success, and we're still fairly early. So when I met a woman in Ethiopia 2 years ago, and she was trying to create the lift for Ethiopia. Elon, I think I reached out to you at that time as well, because she really wanted some Teslas. She still has to take paper fiat cash from her passengers and pay all of her drivers in the same way, because there's no monetary system that she can utilize. There's nothing digital. And Africa as a continent is hugely interconnected from a monetary standpoint, but also hugely taxed in that same way. So a lot of the potential that I see, the internet having a native currency helps her build her business, in a much faster way. And also, if you consider something like Bitcoin existing before YouTube, before Twitter, before Facebook, a lot of the business models that we have today would not be the same. We would certainly not have the dependency we have upon the advertising business model if Bitcoin existed pre-Twitter. And I think the amount of business models that it enables, the amount of innovation it enables going forward, especially when you can consider the whole internet instead of going country by country by country by country, which you have to whenever you're dealing with finance, it really just opens the aperture. And that is what I want to see in my lifetime is a currency that is standard and sound for the internet that everyone can use.
Great. A hallmark of Bitcoin is its fixed supply of 21 million coins. Elon referenced that earlier. It may be the first system that humans have created that humans cannot later change. Kathy, I'm curious, with your background in monetary history and macroeconomics, what are your thoughts on that type of system?
Oh, well, I'll recount the story about Art Laffer and our going through the paper, and he said, as I said, first rules-based monetary system, global, ever. This is a very big idea. Once we had convinced him of the ecosystem itself. Now, this is the role that it's playing, given that the rule is a quantity rule, that 21 million units, is really a store of value role. So there are three roles of money. Store of value, very important. The means of exchange, so for transactions, and the unit of account. Every good priced in terms of whatever the unit is. So store of value is its primary use right now. The others exist. Unit of account, reserve currency of the crypto asset ecosystem. That's being seeded a little bit towards stable coins right now. But the store of value is a very big role. And means of exchange with apps built on top of the Bitcoin blockchain, we think is going to become more of a reality. Right now, high value transactions take place over Bitcoin, and that is a very useful role. So we look at those, and I remember saying to Art, "How big could this be?" And he said, "Well, how big is the U.S. monetary base?" Well, today it's $8 trillion. $8 trillion. At the time we were talking, it was $4 trillion. So we've gone through another crisis since then. And so the store of value, this idea that purchasing power will go up over time if demand rises relative to supply ultimately fixed at 21 million units. That's a very good thing. Purchasing power going up globally around the world. And this idea that it's a hedge against confiscation of wealth. And that can take place in a myriad of ways. But inflation, and especially hyperinflation in emerging markets, is the primary way. Talk about destroying purchasing power. So that's a very big idea. And I'll also mention deflation. In some ways, it's a hedge against deflation. I know some people are confused that we at ARC think that we're in a deflationary environment here in the United States. If that is true, the odds of a hyperinflation in the rest of the world, especially in emerging markets, is also true. So, but this deflation, and we learned from 0809, there's counterparty risk associated with deflation. And I think Bitcoin would be a hedge against that eventuality as well. So it's a very big idea.
Right. I suspect among us, there's not a lot of debate about Bitcoin's potential as a store of value. But Jack, you referenced earlier it being or becoming the native currency of the internet. Can you speak more to that, and also how it relates to maybe how institutions think about it?
Yeah, I mean, like just simple example. If I happen to be in Ghana and my family is in Nigeria, currently I can take anywhere from and I need to send money back, anywhere from 10 to 30% off the top just to send that money back. Whereas if you just focus on the worldwide remittance problem, Bitcoin solves so many of those problems today instantly without having to go through any intermediaries or any slowness or complicated systems that a corporation or a state created. So I think